I'm excited to be here, and I know we're going to have lots of fun. So I'm going to ask for a little bit of vulnerability from you. So we're going to start out with some of that from me. I'm really excited to be here. I'm going to talk about asking. 2024 was the year of asking for me. And the reason I started asking is in this room. Jill is the reason. Jill Trimmel is in the front here. She's my business mentor. At the beginning of 2024, she was like, Brittany, you have to start asking for more things because the worst that people can say is no. And I was like, well, all right. Like, makes sense, simple thing, but I started implementing it, and it totally changed 2024 for me. My biggest goal at the beginning of 2024 was to get into a specific Fortune 500 company that I had in mind, like for opportunities with G.R.O.W and some other things. I didn't know a single person there. I had no idea how I was going to do it, but asking and learning to ask and being vulnerable is the reason that I was able to get in there by the end of the year. So we're going to talk about that journey and a couple other asks that we had along the way. But before I launch into that, most of you have no idea who I am. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. This is baby Brittany. I lifeguarded in college. So that was the best college job you could have had. I didn't swim like I knew how to swim, but I wasn't a swimmer, and there I was like coaching little kids how to swim, but it was fun. I loved it. My degree is actually in education, so I used to be a teacher and a coach. I coached volleyball and basketball. Those are some of my players, some of my kids. I taught middle school, which usually is met with like, oh my gosh, like God bless you. But I loved middle schoolers. I hated teaching high school. I had to do it a couple times, did not love it. Middle school was my jam. Quit my job, and I went and lived in the Netherlands for a year. I nannied over there, so he was the mayor of the city. His kids didn't speak English. He wanted his kids to speak English, so they brought me in to do that. I got to travel a bunch when I was over there, but I also got to play volleyball. I played volleyball and basketball in college, so this was my Dutch volleyball team. If you can imagine the first day of practice, I spoke zero Dutch. It was all in Dutch, and that was an exciting adventure. You can't be in the Netherlands without seeing clogs, especially big ones, windmills. We got to go to Italy, Paris, some other places in the Netherlands. This is very traditional, like Dutch attire. The family I lived with were great, but not super nice. And these were my neighbors, and they kind of adopted me and took me all over. So this year kind of changed my life. Like I cried for the first 3 months. It was really hard. But I made it the whole year, and after that it was kind of like, if I can do that, then I can do pretty much whatever. So I also lived in England briefly, so these are some of my British friends and my family doing some hiking in the Lake District. And a couple other friends, these are the kids that I nannied. They're all like in college now, so that was a long time ago, but they were little babies back then. This is closer to my current life now. This is Thor and Loki. They're my little babies. Thor is on the left and Loki's on the right. I got married. That's my husband. We got married in 2022, and they're also not little anymore. So they're big old boys. They're going to come back later as a point I'm going to use for presentation, so I had to introduce them now. But that's a little bit about me. And also just business-wise, as Brandon said, I am the owner and founder of G.R.O.W, but I also have my hands in a couple other things. My first venture into entrepreneurship was actually with Mom Gets Moxie. I'm a personal trainer. I specialize in perinatal fitness, which is pregnancy and postpartum, and I do a lot of speaking around women's health and wellness in the workplace. I also co-own the whole shebang, which I was talking about with Sunny. That's a women's wellness expo we do here in Muncie once a year, just bringing together a bunch of wellness resources in the community, and then G.R.O.W. So we'll talk the most about G.R.O.W. It's most relevant to what we're going to be discussing today. But that's a little bit about me, and now I'm going to have you guys do a little bit more talking. So I gave you all a 3x5 card, and does everybody have a pen? I probably should have checked, but if everybody has a pen, I have one, I think. I'm going to give you like, oh, nice catch. 30 seconds, 45 seconds. I want you to write a goal on the card. I don't care what it is. It can be physical, personal, professional. You might want to do 5 push-ups by the end of the year. You might want to have $50,000 in revenue. It doesn't matter what it is. It can just be like a phrase, a sentence, really small, a goal that you have for yourself. I think that's like the most I've ever had actually find their people. That's almost half. Nice. Well, thanks for doing that. We're going to harken back to that in a little bit. That was just to get you out of your seats and talk to each other a little bit. But the whole concept of asking does not come naturally to me. I'm not a natural asker. I'm very much a natural people pleaser. Any other people pleasers in here? Okay, yeah, 100%. So those of us who are people pleasers, our asks usually look something like, if it doesn't bother you too much, it's not wildly inconvenient, would you mind helping me? And if not, no problem, right? Like, that's what our asks look like. So that doesn't work super well in business settings because that's an easy way to say no to someone. But before we get too much into work, I want to talk about this whole concept of ask versus guess culture. So in ask culture, no is not a bad word. If you ask for something and someone says no, it's not because they hate you. That is my first assumption. Like, I did something wrong, there's something wrong with me, or what I asked for, that's why they said no. But in ask culture, no isn't a bad word. The relationship's not going to change because someone told you no. It doesn't mean anything bad. It doesn't mean they hated what you asked for. It doesn't mean they don't want to give it to you. The no might be not right now. Whatever it is, you can be secure in the fact that your relationship's going to stay the same. However, on the other hand, in guess culture, no is super emotionally impactful. And it tends to create a lot of uncertainty, and there tends to be a lot of passive aggressiveness. As a child, my mother, love her, and she's great, very passive aggressive. So as a 10-year-old, and she's like, wouldn't it be great if people like took the dishes that they took out of the kitchen back and put them in the sink? And as a 10-year-old, it's like, yes, that would be great. Are you asking me to do it? Are you mad at my sister? Are you wanting my dad to do it? Right? Like, what is it? You're not really sure. And no tends to be very emotionally impactful. It's, I don't like you. I think I'm mad at you. Whatever it is. The other thing around both no and yes is that you end up putting people in a bad position. So those of us who are people pleasers, we don't like hearing no, but we don't like to say it either because then we're putting somebody out or we're disappointing someone. So when I was a teacher and I showed you all those pictures of the kids that I taught and coached, I was single at the time in a private school. And so guess who they always asked to come early and stay late? Me, because I didn't have kids. And so it was the logical thing, right? And did I ever say no? Not once. I couldn't set boundaries. I couldn't say no. I was there early. I was there late. So I didn't have any ability to say no because I felt like I was putting people in a bad position if I didn't give them what they wanted. So then that obviously often leads to people saying yes when they really want to say no. And what does that lead to? Bitterness. Burnout. There's another R word I'm looking for. Yes, resentment. Yeah, it leads to lots of, and none of those are positive emotions, right? So learning to set boundaries around what we're willing to do or not do, but then also being willing to ask for what we actually want instead of guessing what we want or having people guess what we want is super important. So how were you all raised? Was anybody else raised in guess culture? I was very much guess culture. Did anyone else have parents who weren't very direct? Yeah, just a couple of us. How many of you had super direct parents? Oh, that is very unusual. Okay, usually it's a big portion of people that have very passive-aggressive parents. So this is great. You guys all already know how to ask. So we're just reviewing for you. Okay, but when it comes to corporate America, do you think it's more ask or guess? What do you think? Any thoughts? I'm a teacher, so I'll wait here all day for you to respond. Silence doesn't bother me.
I would say ask.
Okay, any other askers? You think it's ask culture? Ask culture? Catch my drift there. Okay. How many think it's guess culture? Okay. There are some factors here, right? It can depend on who your boss is and the environment of your work. But generally speaking, work culture in America is very much ask. How many of you have ever been in a work environment where you worked with an absolute total jerk and he worked his way all the way up, or she worked their way all the way up to the top a lot faster than other people? Has anyone ever been in a situation like that? Why do you think that is? They asked. They come across like total jerks, but do you ever wonder what they want? No, because they're always going to ask for it. So then the nice people kind of get put in the trenches and they don't move forward as quickly because people are stepping all over them, asking for what they want and getting ahead. Now, I'm not a proponent of us all being jerks to get to the top and asking for what we want. There are right ways we can do it. But generally speaking, work culture is ask. So I work a lot with women. Who in general does ask culture favor? It doesn't just have to be one group, it can be multiple groups.
Men, extroverts.
Yes, men, extroverts. Anything else?
As a person who has administered probably hundreds of performance appraisals over the years, I would say men.
Yeah.
It favors men. Women just don't ask for more, and men have, in my experience, a larger appetite for negotiation.
Okay, good. Maybe people who are raised in an ask culture as opposed to a guess culture are going to be more comfortable asking. So, if ask culture is what dominates corporate America for the most part, why don't we do it more? What are some like common insecurities? Why wouldn't people ask? Women, people who are introverts, why do we struggle to ask for what we want or what we need?
Take it personal.
Especially if you hear no, right? Then that's personal, like I'm not good enough. Even if, as someone who gives evaluation, sometimes a no is not right now, right? It's not that they're not capable, it's just not right now. What else?
Feels like hard work should be recognized without needing to draw attention to it.
Yes. And that, I think, is very much a female feeling. Men, generally speaking, and making generalizations, tend to like not have a problem saying what they've done, but women tend to struggle saying their accomplishments. Or introverts. Anything else? There's one or two other specific things I'm looking for. Why might you not want to ask? Maybe the word how. Why wouldn't you want to ask how to do something?
It makes you feel inexperienced.
Yes, yeah. Because then you'll feel like, oh, they'll think I'm stupid, that I don't know what I'm doing, that I'm not qualified, that they made a mistake putting me in this position. All those kinds of things are reasons that we don't ask. So we don't want to live in guess culture. We want to live in ask culture. And this is why Thor and Loki came back, because who is better at asking for what they want than really cute dogs, right? They're probably going to get it. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to ask for what we actually want. I only have 2 points here under asking for what we want because I wanted to keep it really simple. And building relationships has been the biggest factor in me being able to obtain things that I wanted. And that sounds, especially as a woman, it can sound very like self-serving or selfish, but those of you who have been in business for any period of time, how did you get the opportunities that you have now? Yeah. Yep, building relationships. So that's why it's point number 1. And there's just 2 things underneath building relationships that I want to talk about. I want you, when you start building relationships, to do it without having a specific agenda. So one of the other relationships that I built last year was with a guy named Kirk. I had no idea who he was. I was at a networking event down in Anderson, and I was sitting at a round table with some other people that I knew, and he came and sat down like a couple people away from me, and I kid you not, every single person that walked by was like, hi, Kirk. Hey, Kirk. How you doing? Oh, good to see you, Kirk. Hey, Kirk. I have no idea who this man is. And so afterwards, I just went around the table and I was like, I have no idea who you are, but everybody seems to know who you are. So can we have coffee so I can get to know you and learn from you and all those things? So he was like, yeah, why not? So I literally had no agenda with him. It was just, he seems like a good person to know. Have you ever felt like that? Muncie on the move or somewhere, you see somebody that everybody's always talking to, and you're like, I should maybe know that person. So don't have an agenda with them if you can help it, and ask a lot of questions. People love to share their expertise and what they're good at, and generally speaking, you asking questions is gonna go over really well. If they agreed to meet with you, if you don't have an agenda other than I wanna get to know you and I wanna learn from you, and they say yes, then the odds are that they're gonna be very happy to share their experience with you. So that's what I did with Kirk. I had coffee with him several times. He ended up working for a large bank, and he's a salesperson, has been for 30 years or whatever. And I know nothing about sales. In fact, it is when I made it into this Fortune 500 company even that we're gonna talk about, when I went in there to meet with this guy, that was one of the first things I said is, if you're looking for a sales pitch, you're not gonna get it from me because I am not I couldn't sell paper to a copy machine. I really couldn't. I just asked him a bunch of questions about sales and about building relationships for sales and how he made asks and all kinds of things like that. So I didn't really have a huge agenda, asked him a bunch of questions and learned so much. And that's what I've done. That's what I did with Jill when I first met with her and started learning from her. I still ask her a bunch of questions. My funniest story about meeting with Jill is, aside from knowing nothing about sales, I also know nothing about the business side of business, right? My degree's in education. I taught 12-year-olds. So Jill was like, you need to get into QuickBooks. And I was like, I have QuickBooks, that's fine. And she was like, okay, so what does your P&L look like? And that first meeting, I didn't want to look stupid, right? So I'm like, it's good, it's fine. I have no idea what a P&L is. I thought it was a word. I didn't know it was P and L. So I was like, I don't know what a P and L is. What is that? So then in my second meeting with Jill, I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. So please treat me like I'm 5 and explain all of this to me. So she did, and I still am learning a lot from her, but I was vulnerable enough to ask a bunch of questions. I didn't really have an agenda when we first got together other than to know her.
What is P&L?
Profit and loss. Thanks, Brenda, I love it. But yeah, now I have a bookkeeper that does a lot of that for me, but still good stuff to know if you're the one running the company.
We should know.
Yeah. Okay, so point number 1, we're gonna start building relationships. Try not to have a huge agenda. You might have an agenda in the back of your mind, right? I want to know that person because they're the CEO of this company that I want to partner with for XYZ. It's fine to have an agenda. I would not recommend going into a first meeting with them being like, I want this from you, right? We're gonna build that relationship first. So we're gonna work on building relationships, number 1, and then we're gonna be prepared to ask, number 2. And be prepared to ask kind of goes in with knowing what you want. And what I wanted last year is to get into that Fortune 500 company, but I was also really looking for business mentors, people to help me as I grew as a business owner. I went to another networking event. Again, this is in Madison County. And the woman who spoke is incredible. We just heard her speak a couple weeks ago. She's been the president of the Super Bowl. She's a VP for Penske Entertainment. She runs the Indy 500. She told this hilarious story about work-life balance and how she was running the Olympic swimming trials and was so tired that she went to work without pants on. And it was just hilarious. And so she was very vulnerable and authentic and real. An amazing person. And I did a similar thing that I did with Kirk. I went up to her afterwards and was just I really resonated with a lot that you said. I feel like I could learn a lot from you. Would you be willing to get coffee with me and mentor me? And she was like, yeah. So again, to Jill's point, I've been told no a lot, but I've been told yes so many times. Neither Kirk nor Allison, this woman, had any reason to give me the time of day, let alone meet with me multiple times a year. But they did, and often you're gonna find that when you just make an ask, you build a relationship and make an ask, people are gonna say yes. So, again, we're gonna have 2 points under being prepared to ask here, and one is gonna be internal facing and one's gonna be outward facing. So I want you to be specific about what you want. So know in your own mind what you're wanting out of the relationship, what you're wanting to learn from them, whatever it is. I want you to be specific. So going back to Kirk, we ended up getting together for coffee several times. And in the course of that conversation, he asked what one of my goals was with G.R.O.W. And I told him, there's this company down in Madison County, this Fortune 500 company. I would love to get in there. I have no idea how to do it. So I was specific. I told him the name of the company. I told him what I wanted to do at that company. And his response was, I'm on a board with the guy who runs that whole facility. And I was like, oh, well, great. So I was specific about what I wanted. I knew what I wanted. And then I was really clear. When he said that, I was ready. I was prepared to make an ask because I knew what I wanted. So then I was clear with what I wanted him to do once the opportunity presented itself for me. So I said, would you mind sending an email with me and this guy? I could email that company 500 times and never get a response, right? Because they don't know who I am. They have no reason to respond to me. But Kirk, on a board with this guy, they're friends, and he sends an email saying, hey, I know her, you should meet with her. I got a response within 24 hours. So I was specific about what I wanted. I knew what I wanted, even though I had no idea. I didn't know anyone in this company. I had no idea how I was going to get in there. But when the opportunity presented itself, I was ready to ask, and I was really clear about what I wanted that person to do. And I think this is something I still struggle with, but even before I started practicing asking, I was never very clear because of the people pleaser side of me that was very, if it's not inconvenient, maybe you could do something similar to this, and if not, like, don't worry about it. They walk away being like, I don't know what she wanted. Like, I would be happy to help her, but I have no idea what she wants. So being really specific with yourself about, I want X, Y, Z, so that I can ask for A, B, C when the opportunity presents itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think, like, with your building relationships, you have a very clear path with very clear goals of what you want to accomplish. So your intuition, when you have that and you're intimate with your own personal brand, your intuition in building those relationships will guide you, right? Sometimes when you don't even know. And that's why it's so important to keep it open, because you may not know everything that that person has available to you, and letting them free flow is the greatest exchange of potential leverage down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. You never know where it's going to go. That's why I'm a big networker. Even if it's someone that I don't have any idea how we could ever help each other, you never know what might come up in the future, or who they know that they might eventually be like, oh, you guys should be connected. You could work together. You could do really cool things. All right, any questions about that before we move to the next thing? Okay. Well, just because we learned how to ask doesn't mean we're done, because what happens after you ask? Do they just sit there in silence? I mean, they might. What are they going to do? Yeah.
They're going to give you an answer.
They're going to give you an answer, absolutely. Okay, so what happens next after you make an ask? I want you to be ready to hear yes. I think so often we just spend time preparing for the worst. Like, even if we work ourselves up to being able to ask, we're like, they're going to say no. So I'm ready for them to say no, like you psych yourselves out. So I want you to be ready to hear yes, because as I've kind of described in my journey in 2024, I heard yes so many more times than I thought I would. And sometimes I wasn't ready for it. Like, if I asked for something, a sponsorship or a vendor, something that required follow-up, and I wasn't expecting a yes, then I fumbled when they're like, yeah, we'll be happy to sponsor, but we want this. Is that okay? And I was like, yeah, I guess, like, it's fine. I didn't think you were gonna say yes. So be ready to hear yes. We want a little bit of, like, kind of what you were talking about. Like, you're gonna track the things that you're really manifesting and putting out into the universe. So be ready to hear yes. But you might hear no sometimes, and that's okay. Sometimes it's a hard no, sometimes it's a soft no. If you've been working on developing that relationship, you're probably gonna be able to tell the difference. So sometimes if it's a soft no, we can do a pivot. And this is something that Allison, my mentor that forgot her pants, she's the one who talked to me about this a lot. I was talking to her about sponsorship. She works at the track, right? So she works with $1 million sponsors. Yeah, like all kinds of money, all kinds of high profile sponsorships. And I told her about like what I was doing for the conference side of what G.R.O.W is. And she was like, you're going about this like all wrong, essentially. She's like, most big corporations don't really care to have social media posts from you. They don't care even to have their name sometimes, especially for an event you're trying to throw. It's a conference. She's like, what they might want is to send people. So they don't care to have their name, but you're not even giving them that option. You're saying these are your options for your sponsorship and you're not giving them an option. So she's like, if you hear a no, be ready to pivot to, she said, the phrase I use the most is, well, what works for you? So I use that all the time now. When I hear no for a sponsorship, I'll be like, okay, I totally get that. Is there something that would work for you? And lots of times I can get them to pivot, especially with attending the conference. The Fortune 500 company I got into, they did not care at all about having their name on it, but they wanted to give us stuff for the conference, like food and stuff that people were gonna use. So I would never have guessed that. I would have thought a big company would want their name on it. They didn't care. They were just like, we'll provide this and we want to send people and that's all we want. So you might hear no, be ready to pivot with a soft no, but be ready with an exit strategy too. If it is a hard no, if it's like absolutely not, we don't want to burn any bridges on the way out because you never know when you might be able to cross that bridge again by building the relationship or by situation either on your end or their end changing. So be able to exit with grace and maybe you're going to be able to come back and hear a yes next time. There's also a couple things I want you to get comfortable with. Saying I don't know. That one was really hard for me, as illustrated in my story with Jill. I was afraid to tell her that I didn't know what she was talking about. G.R.O.W started in January of 2023, and I spent those first 6 months till about May trying to pretend like I knew what I was doing. And I had no clue what I was doing, absolutely none. Like I said, I am an education major, and then I worked for an insurance company. So I didn't have any experience really in running a business, but I felt like I've got to like fake it. People have to think that I know what I'm doing. And it was when I started saying I didn't know and how, asking for help, that I really started to get like mentors on board, and people have been so generous and kind with their like time and expertise in helping me learn how to grow and be a better business person. So you can use that in any setting, as a business owner, as someone working inside of a company, learning how to grow. I worked for an insurance company for 6 years, and it never once crossed my mind to track my value to them, to negotiate my salary, to negotiate my benefits, to negotiate anything. And if I had asked somebody more experienced than me, I probably could have. Because every once in a while, I would get on Google and I'd look at what other people in my position were making, and it was almost always $10,000 more than what I was making. And I was like, but why? I feel like I'm doing pretty good. But even then, like, I didn't know how to prove how valuable I was. I didn't ask. So that's actually something we do a lot with G.R.O.W now. Jill does a lot of sessions for us about negotiating salaries and things like that, because I think it's really important to know. So don't be afraid to admit you don't know something. Don't be afraid to ask how to do something, and get some allies like in your workspace, at your work, who do similar things than you, who do totally different things than you. Build a good network around yourself to build a lot of different kinds of experiences around what you're doing. Okay, we've got one more thing that I want to talk about. So if we're going to talk about asking, we learned how to do it. We learned how to be ready for what we hear, yes or no. How can you practice asking? So I'm just going to give you a few things. The first thing I want you to be is authentic. So I'm going to put both these up here because I'm going to talk about them kind of similarly. I think authenticity and vulnerability get used interchangeably a lot, but are they the same thing? No. Any ideas on what the difference is between authenticity and vulnerability? Well, I'll talk about it then. Authenticity is like being very truly who you are. Like, I like pink and turtles and race cars. And so in my cubicle at the insurance company, it's gonna be all pink, and I'm gonna have a pet turtle, and I'm gonna have little, what are those little cars called that kids play with? Yeah, okay, see, yeah. I don't have kids, so there we go. Hot Wheels, I'm gonna have Hot Wheels in my desk. That's my authentic self. I love those things, so I'm gonna wear pink and do all the things. Vulnerability kind of takes it a step further, where you're willing to be real about things you struggle with, about things that you find hard, about things that scare you. That's kind of a whole nother layer of yourself and who you are. So you can be authentic. I can wear pink and have a turtle and Hot Wheels on my desk without being vulnerable and sharing with my coworkers like that I don't know how to do something, or my boss scares me. How did you ask him for this, right? You can be authentic without being vulnerable, but the more I've done work with women, especially in G.R.O.W, the biggest connecting factor that I've seen is vulnerability. That's how authentic connections are made, is through vulnerability. And that's actually why I had you guys do the exercise that you did when we started. It's not super, super vulnerable, but it asks kind of personal questions like, what's your favorite book, your favorite podcast? What would you do with extra time? Those aren't just business questions. Those are questions that get a little bit deeper to how you are. So you had to open up to each other just a little bit. The last point that I have here for you is to find people interesting. And I think in today's world, it's really easy to ignore people, right? So we have headphones, we have phones, we can be at the store and never actually look at anyone else. It's really easy to ignore people. So I encourage you to like find people interesting and interact with them based on that. And I'm not saying it has to be a super long thing. I've started to practice just if I like someone's outfit, their hair, whatever it is, I will say it to them. Total strangers, I'll just say it. Because you never know what it's gonna do for them or what it might open up. So last fall, because it was still warm, I go to the grocery store at 7 a.m. on Sunday mornings. It's the best time. It's all just me and the retirees there. 7 in the morning. So one Sunday, there was a younger guy there. I'd never seen him before, and I actually have never seen him since. I probably scared him. But he was wearing the same brand of shoes as me, which is a little bit unusual because I'm like kind of weird, and I wear a lot of barefoot shoes, like those shoes with the really thin soles. And so that's what I had on that day. And I don't often see other people wearing those kind of shoes. We had the exact same brand. And I like noticed that, and I like turned to walk away, just like, oh, that's kind of cool. And I was like, you should say something. And so I turned around and was just like, look, we have the same shoes. And we ended up talking for like 20 minutes. He had just moved to Muncie. He didn't know anybody. And he was like doing something at Ball State, I can't remember, but it was like something that I knew people with. So I was like, oh, make sure you reach out to this person and do this. And then he had some stuff to tell me. And I'm not saying that you have to talk to somebody for 20 minutes every time you tell them you like their shoes, but you never know like what kinds of interactions that you're gonna have with people or who you're gonna meet. So next time you're at the store, grocery store, networking event, whatever it is, take some time to like find people interesting because you never know where it's gonna go. Okay, I'm gonna put this up. That's my LinkedIn, so if you want to connect with me, you can. I'm gonna have us do one more thing, but I think, do you wanna do the other thing first? Don't you do like a break? Do you want to do the break? Yeah, let's do a break, and then we're going to do one more thing.